Welcome to the Precious Teaching. Today we're going to explore James Allen's The Mastery of Destiny, a powerful book that reminds us that each of us is the architect of our own life. Introduction. Have you ever taken a moment to think about how much your choices, even the smallest ones, shape your life day after day? Every decision, every thought, every action we take is like a stone we add to the building of our destiny. We often think that life is a series of external events over which we have no control, but the truth, the one that James Allen reveals in his book The Mastery of Destiny, is very different. He shows us that we are much more powerful than we believe, that our choices are not passive reactions to circumstances, but the true tools that sculpt our future. This idea can seem both encouraging and terrifying, because it means that we have total responsibility for what we become. But it is precisely this responsibility that makes us great. James Allen, a British writer from the early 20th century, is best known for his timeless work As a Man Thinketh. However, in The Mastery of Destiny, he goes even further by exploring in depth the relationship between character, thoughts, and destiny. He doesn't just talk about positive thinking or superficial motivation. He talks about a deep, lasting inner transformation that allows us to take the reins of our existence. Allen reminds us that we are not victims of chance or prisoners of our past. We are the architects of our future, and this future is built on the solid foundation of our character and our personal mastery. This book, although published more than a century ago, has a surprisingly modern resonance. In an era where everything seems to move fast, where distractions are numerous, and where it is easy to get lost in the incessant flow of obligations, it is essential to return to this fundamental truth. What we think and do today determines the quality of our life tomorrow. James Allen's message is universal and timeless. If we want a better life, one with more meaning and more freedom, we must begin by working on ourselves. The mastery of destiny passes through the mastery of oneself, and this mastery is accessible to any person ready to show discipline, clarity, and perseverance. Imagine for a moment that every thought you have is a seed. Some of these seeds are positive, bearers of light, peace, and strength. Others, on the contrary, can be seeds of doubt, fear, or anger. James Allen reminds us that, whether we like it or not, every seed we plant will eventually produce its fruits, and the harvest we will have will depend entirely on what we chose to sow. It is a simple truth, but incredibly powerful. It gives us back the power to understand that nothing in our life is left entirely to chance. What is even more inspiring is that the mastery of destiny is not a call for unrealistic perfection, but rather an invitation to progress. Allen does not tell us that we must control everything, but that we can always choose to move forward, to improve ourselves, to transform a flaw into a strength, to convert a weakness into a lesson. He insists that character is not fixed, that it is built day after day through our choices, and that it is the key that opens the door to a better future. In this video, we will explore together the great ideas of this powerful book and see how they can help us live with more awareness, strength, and confidence. This is not just a book summary. It is an invitation to look at our own lives and ask ourselves, am I really choosing my destiny, or am I letting it be shaped without me? So I encourage you to stay with me until the end, because each part of this summary will bring you a new perspective, a new key to taking control of your life. And if this kind of content resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, a community where we grow together, step by step, by discovering books, ideas, and reflections that nourish our mind and our soul. Remember, your destiny is not something that happens to you by chance. It is the direct reflection of your choices and your character. And that's exactly what we are going to discover through The Mastery of Destiny. Chapter 1. The Power of Character. Character is the key to destiny. This phrase, which seems so simple at first glance, actually holds a universal and timeless truth that James Allen develops with force and clarity in The Mastery of Destiny. Through his writing, He reminds us that nothing in our lives is more fundamental than the quality of the character we cultivate day after day. It is neither wealth nor luck, nor even external circumstances that determine our future, but rather the inner essence that we shape through our thoughts, habits, and daily choices. Character is not a fixed or predetermined attribute. It is not a prison inherited from the past or the conditions in which we were born. It is the fruit of a process, a continuous construction, a building that we build through our decisions. James Allen insists that our thoughts shape our habits, that our habits end up creating our character, and that this character determines, in the long term, the course of our existence. Thus, every thought we hold is a seed, every action we repeat is a stone, and the whole forms the invisible but very real architecture of our destiny. This concept frees us from a common trap, that of believing that we are prisoners of who we have been. How many times do we hear people say, "I'm like this, I can't change," or "My life is like this because I wasn't lucky"? These phrases express a resignation, a belief that our character is fixed and that our conditions determine everything. Yet Allen teaches us the opposite. Nothing is unchangeable if we consciously decide to transform our thoughts and habits. Of course, change requires time, perseverance, and discipline, but it is always possible because character is alive. It evolves, it refines or deteriorates, depending on what we decide to nurture within ourselves. The link between thoughts and character is particularly important. Allen pushes us to become aware that our thoughts are never neutral. Every thought is an inner act that brings us closer to a certain type of person or takes us away from another. If we constantly nourish thoughts of anger, envy, or fear, our character will end up reflecting these energies and our actions will bear their mark. But if, on the contrary, we choose to cultivate thoughts of courage, kindness, and perseverance, then it is these qualities that will permeate our character, and this character, once solidified, will directly influence the circumstances of our life. In other words, we always reap the fruits of what we have sown inwardly. Character therefore becomes a kind of mirror of our habitual thoughts. It is the visible sum of what was invisible. And it is precisely for this reason that it is the decisive factor of destiny. Because our future is nothing but the projection, in the outside world, of what we have cultivated within ourselves. A person whose character is built on discipline, honesty, and kindness will necessarily attract opportunities aligned with these qualities, even if it takes time. Conversely, a person whose character has been formed in negligence, dishonesty, or apathy will inevitably encounter the painful consequences of these inner choices. What James Allen highlights is a universal law. We cannot escape the consequences of our character. External circumstances are not inevitable fates fallen from the sky. They are the direct or indirect results of what we have sown inside ourselves. It is a demanding truth because it takes away our ability to constantly blame others or chance for what happens to us. But it is also a liberating truth because it puts the keys to our future in our hands. If we want a better, richer life, more aligned with our deep aspirations, we just have to start transforming our character, and that begins with the mastery of our thoughts and habits. It is fascinating to note that this philosophy is consistent with what many spiritual and philosophical traditions have been teaching for centuries. Character is always perceived as the essence of the person, the source of their dignity, the foundation of their greatness. In the modern world, where the focus is often on appearance, possessions, or external success, this reminder from James Allen is more necessary than ever. It recenters us on what is lasting and true, character. Because wealth can disappear, fame can fade, but a strong and noble character remains and continues to open paths, even in the most difficult moments. Let's take the example of a person who, through life's trials, always chooses to act with integrity, even when it seems disadvantageous in the short term. They might lose some immediate opportunities, be misunderstood, or even criticized, but in the long term, their solid character will attract trusting relationships, deeper opportunities, and an inner peace that nothing can take away from them. On the opposite side, a person who constantly sacrifices their values for quick gains will end up building a fragile character that will not withstand the storms of life. Here again, Allen's law is verified. Character shapes destiny. But it is essential to emphasize that building a good character does not mean being perfect. Allen does not speak of an inaccessible ideal, but of a path of progressive transformation. Every effort we make to correct a weakness, every small victory over ourselves, every positive thought we choose to hold, all of this contributes to the building of a more solid character. It is in the repetition of these small daily victories that true inner strength is forged. Thus, no one is condemned to remain a prisoner of their flaws or past mistakes. Everyone can, through conscious practice, reorient their character and, consequently, their destiny. This chapter on the power of character therefore invites us to a deep inner work. It pushes us to observe our thoughts, to examine our habits, and to understand that none of this is insignificant. Every moment is an opportunity to sow a seed of strength, kindness, or wisdom. And even if we don't see the fruits immediately, they will eventually appear, because the law of the harvest is inevitable. Allen wants us to become aware that our future is not written by others, but by ourselves, and that the main tool we have for this is our character. Ultimately, character is not just what we are in calm or comfortable moments, but what we reveal in moments of crisis, pain, and difficult choices. It is there that the truth of our inner construction manifests and influences the course of our life. If we have cultivated patience, courage, righteousness, and perseverance, these qualities will become protective and creative forces capable of transforming trials into springboards. But if we have neglected this inner work, then the storms of life risk sweeping us away without us being able to get back up. This is why James Allen asserts with so much conviction that character is the key to destiny. It is not an abstract slogan, but a concrete reality, a law of life that acts silently but with implacable precision. And the beauty of this truth is that it places immense power in our hands. The power to consciously choose the thoughts we hold, the habits we build, and therefore the destiny we create. Chapter 2. The Law of Cause and Effect. The law of cause and effect is one of the most powerful and universal pillars that James Allen develops in The Mastery of Destiny. It crosses all dimensions of human life, from the most intimate to the most vast. It tells us, with an implacable clarity, that nothing in our existence is due to chance, that nothing comes from nowhere, and that everything we experience today is the direct or indirect consequence of what we have sown before, through our thoughts, our choices, and our actions. This law is not a mystical belief, but a lucid observation of reality. Just as a given seed inevitably produces the corresponding fruit, our thoughts and actions always bear their fruits, sooner or later. Understanding the law of cause and effect is admitting that we cannot harvest peace if we sow discord, that we cannot hope for prosperity if we cultivate laziness, that we cannot achieve love if we harbor jealousy and bitterness within ourselves. Life reflects with incredible accuracy what we project into it. James Allen insists on this point. Every thought is an invisible seed that we throw into the fertile soil of our mind and our actions, and this soil makes no distinction. It grows what we give it, whether it's seeds of virtue or seeds of vice. This vision puts us in the face of an immense responsibility, because if everything has a cause, it means that we are the main architects of our destiny. It is no longer a matter of blaming luck, fate, or others for what we experience. It is also no longer a matter of believing oneself to be a victim of a capricious destiny that distributes suffering and blessings arbitrarily. No, what we experience is the logical consequence of what we have produced consciously or unconsciously. If we take the time to observe our lives with honesty, we can trace back to the root of our current experiences and see that every difficulty, every victory, every relationship, every situation finds its origin in choices made yesterday, in habits cultivated over time. James Allen does not deny the existence of events that seem to arise from the outside, but even these events, he says, find a particular echo in our lives because of the inner ground we have prepared. For example, two people can live through the same ordeal, but one will see it as an opportunity to grow, while the other will collapse under its weight. It is not the ordeal itself that creates destiny, but the way our character and inner habits have prepared the ground for how we react to it. Cause and effect are therefore found not only in what happens to us, but especially in what we do with what happens to us. The beauty of this law is that it is universal and impartial. It plays no favorites. It privileges neither the rich nor the poor, neither the powerful nor the weak. It always acts in the same way, like gravity. If we throw a stone, it falls. If we sow a seed, it grows. If we hold a thought, it takes shape in our words and actions. This perfect fairness is both demanding and reassuring. Demanding because it doesn't let us flee from our responsibilities, but reassuring because it gives us the certainty that righteous efforts, repeated with perseverance, will always produce their fruits, even if it takes time. Let's take the example of a person who dreams of improving their professional life. They can hope for a promotion or a better opportunity for a long time, but if their daily thoughts are centered on fear, if their habits are marked by procrastination and a lack of discipline, then the cause they sow cannot produce the effect they hope for. On the other hand, if they cultivate perseverance every day, if they learn continuously, if they show consistency in their effort, then sooner or later, the law of cause and effect will open new doors for them. It is not chance, but a logical consequence. This law acts in a subtle but inevitable way. Sometimes the causes we sow seem small, almost insignificant. A smile given, a thought repeated, a small discipline maintained, a gesture of kindness, a word of truth. All this seems insignificant in the short term, yet, accumulated and repeated, these causes create effects that transform an entire life. Conversely, a small lie, a tolerated laziness, a nurtured grudge seem harmless, but put together, they build an inner ground that attracts painful consequences. The law of cause and effect never fails, even in the smallest things. This is why James Allen invites everyone to become aware of their thoughts, as one would take care of a garden. The attentive gardener knows that he must pull out weeds as soon as they appear, because otherwise they will choke out the good seeds. In the same way, we must watch over our thoughts, because they are the causes that will produce our realities tomorrow. If we let thoughts of doubt, fear, or hatred develop, we cannot be surprised to harvest dissatisfaction, failure, or loneliness. But if we cultivate thoughts of courage, confidence, kindness, and perseverance, then these invisible seeds will produce visible fruits of success, peace, and joy. The law of cause and effect also applies in our relationships. If a woman or a man constantly complains about not being respected, loved, or recognized, it is useful to examine what is being sown in the relationship. Do we truly offer respect, love, and recognition to others? Because what we give always ends up coming back. If we cultivate benevolence, even in difficult environments, this seed will produce an effect, maybe not immediately, but sooner or later. And even if it is not directly returned by those to whom we gave it, life, in its perfect justice, will return it to us in another form. It is essential to understand that the law of cause and effect does not stop at a single cycle. It acts in a chain, creating circles of experiences that amplify over time. A recurring thought becomes a habit becomes a character trait, and this character ends up generating circumstances that seem natural, but they are not. They are the result of a long succession of causes. A person who constantly sees themselves as unlucky does not realize that they may have sown seeds of inattention, negativity, or fear for years, which have ended up producing these experiences. This is where the power of Allen's teaching lies. Because if we understand that the law of cause and effect governs our life, then we also understand that we can consciously choose the causes we want to sow starting today to create a different future. This takes courage because it forces us to face our past habits, sometimes destructive ones. But it also opens up an immense door toward transformation. Every thought of courage, every act of love, every disciplined gesture becomes a seed of a richer and more luminous future. This law also teaches us patience, because there is a delay between cause and effect. The farmer who sows wheat does not harvest the next day. He must wait, water, and protect the seed. In the same way, our righteous thoughts and actions do not always produce an immediate result. But this does not mean they are in vain. The delay is a natural part of the process. And understanding this allows us to continue to sow with confidence, even if we do not yet see the fruits. Allen encourages us to believe in this law as we believe in the sunrise. What is sown will come to fruition without fail. Ultimately, the law of cause and effect is not just a philosophical principle. It is an invitation to live with increased awareness. Every day, every thought, every gesture has an importance. We are the gardeners of our life, and what we choose to sow today will determine what we harvest tomorrow. There is no shortcut, no miraculous chance that bypasses this law. But there is a great beauty in this rigor, because it makes us masters of our lives. James Allen wants to remind us that we are not helpless spectators, tossed about by uncontrollable forces. We are creators, and every moment is a seed. The question we must ask ourselves is therefore simple and profound. What are we going to sow today? Fear or courage? Laziness or discipline? Selfishness or love? Because tomorrow we will inevitably reap what we have chosen. This is the entire greatness and responsibility of the law of cause and effect. Chapter 3. Self-control. Self-control is at the heart of James Allen's teaching in The Mastery of Destiny. Without it, all great ideas of inner transformation and character building remain simple intentions without real force in daily life. Self-control is the supreme discipline that allows us to transform the raw energy of our desires, emotions, and impulses into a constructive power capable of building a solid destiny. It is the key that opens the door to lasting success and true freedom. When we talk about self-control, we are not referring to rigid repression or forced austerity, but to a conscious direction of our inner energy. Just as a rider must learn to control their horse to move effectively, a human being must learn to guide their thoughts, emotions, and actions to move forward in life without being carried away by their most basic instincts. Allen insists on this point. An individual incapable of controlling themselves is like a boat delivered to the currents, without a rudder, tossed by the waves and unable to plot a clear course. The first domain of this mastery is that of the mind. Our thoughts, when left free and disorderly, scatter, get lost in daydreams or worries, and do not create anything constructive. But when we learn to observe and direct our thoughts, we become capable of concentrating them on what really matters. Let's take the example of a student who has to prepare for an important exam. Without mental discipline, they will spend their time giving in to distractions, checking their phone, or dreaming of something else. But with conscious self-control, they can decide to direct their attention, to stay focused, and thus transform their study hours into an effective preparation that will bear fruit. Self-control is also expressed in the management of emotions. Anger, jealousy, envy, and fear are powerful forces that can destroy a life if they are not held in check. A word too many in a moment of anger can break a precious relationship. A decision made under the influence of fear can close the door to a beautiful opportunity. But conversely, the one who knows how to recognize an emotion at the moment it is born, to understand it and channel it, transforms this energy into wisdom and strength. James Allen reminds us that emotions are not enemies, they are raw forces. Like fire, they can burn and destroy, but under control they warm, illuminate, and serve as a motor. A striking example of emotional control is found in the professional domain. Imagine a woman working in a competitive environment in the United States. A colleague unfairly criticizes her work in front of others. Her first impulse is to retort violently, to defend herself with anger. But thanks to her self-control, she chooses to remain calm, to respond with dignity, and to wait for a more appropriate moment to explain herself. The result: instead of seeming aggressive, she gains respect and credibility. This simple choice, the fruit of inner control, can radically transform the evolution of her career. Self-control concerns not only the mind and emotions, but also the body and habits. The human being is often a prisoner of small, automatic behaviors that undermine their vitality. Overeating, dependence on digital distractions, the inability to maintain a balanced sleep rhythm. Each of these behaviors seems insignificant in the short term, but accumulated over time, they weaken energy, undermine confidence, and distance a person from success. Conversely, the gradual adoption of controlled habits, a healthy diet, a regular exercise practice, well-respected rest times, strengthens character and provides a solid foundation for accomplishing one's goals. James Allen insists that self-control is inseparable from true freedom. Many people think that freedom is doing what you want, when you want. But in reality, this attitude often leads to slavery to passions. The man or woman who allows themselves to be dominated by their immediate desires is not free, but a prisoner of their impulses. True freedom is born when we are able to consciously choose our actions, even if it requires sacrifices. The one who knows how to say no to a harmful temptation, who knows how to defer gratification for a greater goal, who knows how to discipline themselves in the small things of daily life, that person possesses a freedom that nothing and no one can take away from them. To illustrate this, let's think about the story of successful entrepreneurs in the United States. Many say they had to give up evenings out, immediate pleasures, and tempting distractions to invest their time and energy in their projects. It was not chance that led them to success, but their ability to control themselves, to consciously choose present effort for a better future. This principle doesn't belong only to great public figures. It is valid for each of us in our daily lives. Self-control, Allen emphasizes, is a school that is practiced every day. It is not acquired all at once, but through constant vigilance and renewed willpower. Each time we resist a negative impulse, we choose patience instead of haste. We prefer discipline to letting go. We strengthen our character. These are small, invisible victories that, accumulated, create a solid character and a luminous destiny. Another essential aspect is the transformation of destructive impulses into constructive forces. For example, anger, instead of exploding in hurtful words, can be transformed into energy to improve an unjust situation. Fear, instead of paralyzing, can be used as a signal to better prepare oneself. Desire, instead of leading to excess, can be oriented toward noble goals. Self-control, therefore, does not consist of stifling or denying our inner urges, but of reorienting them toward elevated goals. This is where we understand why Allen considers self-control an indispensable foundation for success. Without it, talent is wasted, intelligence is dispersed, and energy is lost. With it, every quality finds a clear channel to express itself. Every effort is directed toward a lasting construction. Self-control is what transforms potential into reality, intention into action, and a dream into a destiny. In modern life, particularly in societies where distractions abound and solicitations are permanent, this quality is more precious than ever. Notifications, advertisements, and social media constantly seek to capture our attention, to divert our energy toward immediate and ephemeral pleasures. Without inner discipline, we become slaves to these external forces. But by developing self-control, we regain the power of our attention, our time, and our choices. We become capable of saying, "No, I choose what nourishes my future rather than what flatters my present." James Allen reminds us that every great destiny, Every life marked by success and positive influence is supported by an invisible inner discipline. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and builders were not carried by luck, but by a constant mastery of themselves. They knew how to get up when others were sleeping, persevere when others were giving up, and stay calm when others were getting carried away. It is not magic, but a universal law. He who controls himself builds himself, and he who lets go destroys himself. Thus, self-control appears as both an invitation and a requirement. An invitation because it opens the way to a free, conscious, and fulfilling life. A requirement because it demands daily effort, a vigilance at all times. But this effort, far from being a burden, becomes a source of joy and power, because it gives us the certainty that we are not slaves to our impulses, but masters of our destiny. This is why, in this chapter dedicated to self-control, James Allen teaches us that it is by learning to govern ourselves internally that we can truly govern our lives. Without discipline, we remain prisoners of inner chaos. With discipline, we become the conscious architects of our future. Chapter 4. Personal Responsibility. Taking personal responsibility is one of the most profound and demanding principles that James Allen develops in The Mastery of Destiny. It is a decisive step on the path of awakening and inner transformation. As long as we blame our failures, our frustrations, and our obstacles on others or on external circumstances, we remain powerless. But the moment we fully accept that we are the authors of our thoughts, our choices, and therefore our destiny, we regain control of our life and become capable of transforming it. Personal responsibility is the key to true autonomy and freedom because it frees us from the role of victim and places us in that of a conscious actor of our existence. Most people grow up in a culture where the reflex to blame is omnipresent. When a project fails, it's tempting to say it's the fault of colleagues, the boss, the economy, or even the weather. When a relationship ends, many only blame the other person without ever examining their own attitudes or behaviors. When a goal is not reached, we talk about bad luck or unfavorable circumstances. James Allen reminds us that this way of thinking is a dangerous illusion because it prevents growth. As long as we project the cause of our results outside of ourselves, we remain prisoners of forces that we believe are uncontrollable. Taking personal responsibility, on the contrary, is accepting that, even if we don't always control events, we always control our way of responding to them. This is not to deny the real difficulties or injustices of the world, but to recognize that what determines our evolution is not what happens to us, but what we do with what happens to us. Two people can go through the same ordeal. One collapses and remains stuck in complaint. The other rises and transforms this ordeal into a springboard. The difference is not in the ordeal itself, but in the inner attitude toward it. Allen emphasizes that every thought is a seed, every choice is a cause, and every result is an effect. If I nourish thoughts of laziness and choose to avoid effort, sooner or later I will reap the fruits of it in the form of failures or stagnation. If on the contrary I cultivate discipline, if I choose to learn, to work, and to persevere, I will reap the fruits of my seeds. Thus, it becomes useless to blame chance or others. Our lives are shaped from the inside by what we have sown consciously or unconsciously over time. Let's take a concrete example in the context of work. Imagine a woman who feels frustrated at not progressing in her career. She could accuse her boss of favoritism, her colleagues of not supporting her, or the job market of not offering opportunities. But if she chooses the path of personal responsibility, she will ask herself, did I really give my best? Have I continuously developed my skills? Have I cultivated a proactive and collaborative attitude? If the answer is no, then she clearly sees that her progress largely depends on her own efforts. If the answer is yes and the obstacles persist, she can choose to broaden her horizons, to look elsewhere, to create her own opportunities. In both cases, instead of feeling trapped by a system or by people, she regains power over her life by assuming her responsibility. Personal responsibility also applies in the sphere of relationships. Too often, we blame others for our misfortunes or our dissatisfactions. But every relationship is a reflection of what we tolerate, what we express, or what we neglect. A toxic relationship, for example, does not persist only because the other person acts badly, but also because we allow these behaviors to be repeated. By choosing to set clear boundaries, to communicate honestly, or even to leave a destructive relationship, we exercise our personal responsibility and we create the space for a healthier relational life. One of the biggest traps to avoid is that of victimization. Constantly presenting oneself as a victim of others, of the past, of society, or of circumstances can arouse temporary compassion, but in the long term, it deprives us of energy and power. To be a victim is to abandon your inner authority. Taking personal responsibility is saying, yes, I have been hurt. Yes, I have gone through injustices, but I choose not to let these events define my future. It is an act of courage because it means we can no longer hide behind excuses, but it is also a liberating act because it gives us back the reins of our life. Allen highlights a simple but profound truth. We are not always responsible for what happens to us, but we are responsible for what we become. This principle resonates particularly in modern contexts where economic, social, and personal challenges are numerous. In a fast-paced world, where crises and uncertainties seem inevitable, the temptation to blame systems or circumstances is strong. But true strength is born when each person decides to take their share of responsibility and act according to what they can change. A powerful example of this principle is that of many women who, faced with significant obstacles, decided to create their own path. Some launched businesses after losing their jobs. Others chose to go back to school despite financial difficulties. Still others transformed a personal pain into a mission to help others. These stories show that personal responsibility is not an abstract theory, but a concrete practice that changes lives. Personal responsibility also invites us to look at our daily thoughts. If I spend my days nurturing negative judgments, complaining or criticizing others, I create an inner atmosphere that ends up shaping my external results. But if I choose to cultivate gratitude, to see opportunities in every situation, to seek to improve myself instead of pointing fingers, I create a positive dynamic that is reflected in my work, my relationships, and my well-being. Allen insists on this point. The outside world is often a mirror of our inner world. Another fundamental aspect is patience. Many people want results without taking on the efforts. They blame time, slow progress, and obstacles. But taking personal responsibility is also accepting that every seed takes time to grow. If today I don't yet see the fruits of my work or my efforts, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. It simply means that the process is taking its course. Blaming the outside is like pulling out the seed while accusing the earth. Responsibility, on the contrary, consists of continuing to water, to persevere, and to have confidence in the process. The beauty of personal responsibility, as James Allen describes it, is that it transforms every moment of life into an opportunity for growth. No matter where we are, no matter what we have been through, there is always a part on which we can act. This doesn't mean that everything is easy, but that everything is possible from the moment we agree to fully play our role as the author of our destiny. Ultimately, this chapter on personal responsibility is an invitation to a change of perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" let's ask ourselves the question, "What can I learn and how can I respond differently?" Instead of saying, "Others are preventing me from succeeding," let's say, "What actions can I take to create my success?" It is this simple reorientation that separates those who stagnate from those who advance, those who submit from those who transform. James Allen reminds us with force that the mastery of our destiny begins with this recognition: no one will come to save us. No one is responsible in our place. Our lives are shaped by our choices, and these choices belong to us. As long as we blame, we put this power in the hands of others. but as soon as we assume, we take back the keys to our future. Chapter 5. The Role of Difficulties and Trials. In The Mastery of Destiny, James Allen dedicates a profound reflection to the role that difficulties and trials play in the formation of character and in the building of our destiny. For many, obstacles seem to be insurmountable walls, hindrances to progress, and injustices that prevent us from moving forward. But Allen invites us to radically change our perspective. He reminds us that trials are not enemies, but allies. They constitute the forge in which our character is tested, refined, and fortified. Without them, we would remain fragile, immature, and incapable of assuming the greatness of our destiny. This chapter is an invitation to see in every difficulty an opportunity for inner growth, a chance to become stronger, wiser, and freer. Human life is marked by contrasts: joy and sadness, success and failure, comfort and pain. It is an illusion to think that one can experience a linear existence made only of ease and happiness. It is often in pain, in effort, and in resistance against storms that we discover the unsuspected strengths that were dormant within us. Trials act as mirrors. They reveal what we truly carry in our heart and in our mind. When a difficulty arises, some people react with discouragement and anger, while others react with courage and perseverance. This contrast does not come from the trial itself, but from the inner quality of the one who is going through it. Allen insists that obstacles are not sent to destroy us, but to instruct us. Every difficulty contains a lesson. Every pain hides a teaching. Every failure is a step toward a better version of ourselves. Let's take the example of a woman who loses her job. At first glance, this can seem like a catastrophe: loss of income, a feeling of failure, and fear of the future. But this same experience can become a springboard to reorient her career, develop new skills, or even create her own project. What seemed to be a painful end turns out to be a beginning full of new possibilities. It is not the event itself that defines the outcome, but the way it is welcomed and used. One of James Allen's great teachings is that trials polish our character. A rough diamond only reveals its beauty when it is cut and worked. In the same way, the human soul reveals itself in all its splendor when it is put to the test. Patience, resilience, wisdom, and courage are not theoretical qualities. They are born and strengthened only in action and in the face of challenges. It is because we have known loss that we appreciate the value of what we possess. It is because we have gone through struggles that we understand the meaning of victory. Allen also invites us to consider trials as revelators of our deep beliefs. When everything is going well, it is easy to proclaim values of patience, kindness, or courage. But it is at the heart of difficult moments that we discover if these values are truly rooted. Anger in the face of injustice, impatience in the face of delays, and fear in the face of the unknown. All these reactions show where we still have to grow. Rather than seeing them as definitive weaknesses, we can consider them as signals indicating the areas of our character that need reinforcement. Let's take a concrete example from daily life. A woman undertakes to build a new life by moving alone, far from her family, with an ambitious project. She quickly encounters obstacles: loneliness, financial difficulties, and criticism from those around her. If she focuses only on the pain, she can give up and conclude that this dream was not for her. But if she chooses to see these trials as training, each difficulty becomes an additional step toward her own mastery. Loneliness becomes an opportunity to learn to love herself. The financial difficulties become a school of management and creativity. The criticism becomes a chance to strengthen her inner confidence. What initially seemed like a burden becomes the foundation of her future success. Allen also highlights the link between trials and maturity. Many seek to flee from difficulties by all means: distractions, addictions, excuses. But those who choose to face reality with courage grow in wisdom and depth. Trials teach us patience, discipline, and perseverance, all indispensable qualities for achieving a true mastery of oneself and of one's destiny. Without them, we would remain on the surface of things, incapable of accessing the highest levels of our potential. It is important to emphasize that seeing trials as opportunities does not mean minimizing them. Recognizing the pain, fear, or difficulty is essential. What James Allen teaches is that this pain can be transformed into creative energy. Instead of letting ourselves be crushed by it, we can use it as fuel to elevate ourselves. Every time we choose to get back up after a fall, we strengthen our character and get closer to the mastery of our destiny. Furthermore, trials connect us to the universal. By going through suffering, we develop empathy for those who are living similar struggles. A woman who has known illness deeply understands the value of health. A person who has gone through a period of poverty understands what it means to share. Trials do not isolate us. They connect us because they are a common human experience. And in this connection, they broaden our heart and refine our humanity. Allen also reminds us that trials, far from being accidents of fate, are often the natural consequences of our past choices. The mistakes we have made and the negligences we have tolerated end up manifesting in the form of difficulties. Rather than blaming fate, he invites us to see these trials as opportunities to correct our trajectories and build a more solid life. Thus, pain ceases to be a punishment. It becomes a teacher. The great wisdom of this chapter lies in this truth. Every difficulty carries within it the seed of a transformation. The choice belongs to us. We either let ourselves be crushed, or we use this energy to elevate ourselves. Trials are not there to tell us that we are weak. They are there to reveal that we are capable of becoming strong. Ultimately, the role of difficulties and trials, as James Allen develops it, is essential in the mastery of our destiny. Without them, we would never know the depth of our inner strength or the beauty of victory after the struggle. By learning to welcome trials as opportunities for growth, we transform our view of life. We no longer fear obstacles. We see them as benevolent masters, sometimes severe, but always bearers of wisdom. And it is by going through these trials again and again that we will forge the solid and luminous character capable of shaping a destiny worthy of our highest potential. Chapter 6. Living in Accordance with High Ideals. In The Mastery of Destiny, James Allen leads us, step by step, toward a deep understanding of what it truly means to orient one's life. After having explored character, the law of cause and effect, self-control, personal responsibility, and the formative role of trials, he brings us to this final summit, living in accordance with high ideals. It is no longer simply about improving one's daily life or correcting past mistakes, but about raising one's gaze and anchoring one's journey in a vision that transcends the limits of the present moment. It is at this level that destiny takes on its full dimension, because it is no longer just the product of our thoughts and choices, but the conscious expression of an alignment with noble and lasting values. Allen insists on a central point. The life of every human being is governed by ideals, whether they are conscious or unconscious. Even those who claim to live without an ideal pursue a certain vision of life in spite of themselves, whether it's the search for comfort, pleasure, or security. The question, then, is not whether we have ideals, but rather which ones we choose. Living with low ideals, centered solely on selfishness, material accumulation, or the search for power, leads to an unstable and unsatisfied life. But rising toward higher ideals, truth, justice, compassion, discipline, service, allows us to transform each day into a step toward a greater destiny. The strength of ideals lies in their power to guide our thoughts and actions. A person who places truth at the heart of their life will know to choose honesty even when lying seems easier. A woman who is attached to compassion will be able to transform her wounds into bridges toward others. A man who puts justice at the center of his journey will refuse to take advantage of others, even if it seems to offer him an immediate advantage. Ideals are like stars in the night. We never reach them directly, but they give us a clear and constant direction. They raise our gaze and prevent our steps from getting lost in the swamps of mediocrity. Living in accordance with high ideals also means accepting the discipline they require. It is easy to proclaim great principles, but more difficult to embody them daily. Choosing to remain faithful to one's values when circumstances become difficult is the test that reveals the sincerity of our commitment. James Allen reminds us that ideals are not vain dreams, but real forces that transform our character when we remain faithful to them. They become like spiritual seeds which, with time, bear abundant fruits: inner peace, self-respect, confidence, and inspiration for others. Let's take a concrete example. Imagine a woman who decides to live by the ideal of education and transmission. Despite financial difficulties, despite criticism or obstacles, she chooses every day to persevere in learning and to share her knowledge. Little by little, this ideal transforms her life. Her daily efforts shape her character, her discipline opens up unexpected opportunities, and those around her begin to be inspired by her constancy. What initially seemed like a simple choice becomes an inner force that allows her to transform her destiny, but also that of others. Another example can be found in faith. Not blind faith, but the deep conviction that life has meaning and that every human being has a mission to accomplish. Such faith does not eliminate trials, but it gives strength to face them. When a person believes that they are moving toward a goal greater than their own personal satisfaction, they find the energy to persevere beyond obstacles. Ideals nourish this faith and allow them to remain standing when everything seems to be collapsing. James Allen also reminds us that high ideals are not only personal, they connect the individual to the universal. A life guided by noble values does not only benefit the one who embodies them, but the entire human community. A woman who chooses generosity does not only elevate her own character, she inspires those around her and contributes to creating a more just society. A man who lives with integrity does not only build his own destiny, he opens the way for others who are looking for a role model to follow. Thus, living with high ideals is participating in a larger movement, that of the spiritual evolution of humanity. The natural conclusion of this journey is clear. Each of us is the architect of our destiny. Our thoughts, our choices, our trials, and our ideals build, day after day, the edifice of our life. We are not victims of a capricious chance, but the conscious or unconscious artisans of our future. James Allen insists on this truth with particular force. You are responsible for your life, and by cultivating noble ideals, you have the power to transform your existence into a worthy and luminous work. Living in accordance with high ideals is choosing every day to build on a solid foundation. It is preferring truth over lies, discipline over laxity, patience over impatience, and generosity over selfishness. These choices may seem small daily, but they accumulate and end up shaping a life full of meaning. And it is precisely this meaning that nourishes the deep and lasting joy that we are all looking for. James Allen's conclusion is an inspiring invitation. If you look at your life today and you see areas of chaos, pain, or confusion, remember that nothing is fixed. Every day, every moment, you have the power to reorient your thoughts and actions toward higher ideals. Even a small step in this direction counts, because it modifies your trajectory. Destiny is not imposed from the outside. It is built from the inside, stone by stone, choice by choice, ideal after ideal. That's why Allen states, "You are the architect of your destiny." These words resonate as a call to responsibility and freedom. They remind us that, despite circumstances, despite trials, despite failures, we always have the power to choose. And this choice, repeated day after day, ends up creating a worthy, beautiful, and inspiring life. In summary, the mastery of destiny teaches us that true power does not lie in the mastery of external circumstances, but in the mastery of oneself and in alignment with high ideals. Character, responsibility, discipline, faith, and perseverance form the pillars of this inner construction. Difficulties become allies, trials become teachers, and every step toward a noble ideal brings us closer to a fulfilled life. So, remember, to be the master of your destiny is not to wait for luck to knock on your door, but to choose every day to cultivate clear thoughts, to take righteous actions, and to walk with courage toward your ideals. It is in this daily faithfulness that the greatness of an existence is revealed. If this message resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us about your own experiences of trials transformed into strengths and of ideals that guide your life. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey together, because every day is a new opportunity to build, step by step, the luminous destiny that you deserve.